Good day everyone, this is Ma'am Adoko and this video is the continuations of our topic, the accounting equations. And the accounting equations is assets equals liabilities plus equities. When using the accounting equations, one must remember the accounting identity, which means that the equality must be maintained throughout all transactions. It means that the left side of the equations must be equal to the right side of the equations. And the reason for this, because the assets of the entity will always be claimed by another party, like the creditors. And also transactions always have a dual effect on the accounting equations. Okay, so what affect on the left side must be also affect on the right side of the equation. So each transaction of the entity would have to affect at least two accounts in order for the equations to remain balanced. And such accounts may be on the same side, that is increase assets and at the same time decrease assets, or on both sides of the equation, the right and the left, that is increase assets and at the same time increase the equities, or increase assets and increase liabilities. From simple accounting equation, we can expand the accounting equation to allow us to see two things separately. Okay, so the first one is the impact on equity from net income, like the increase by revenues or the decrease by expenses. And then the second thing is the effect of transactions with owners, okay, like the drawings, the sale or purchase of ownership interest. Okay, so I have here expanded accounting equations. Okay, so the expanded accounting equations takes the simple accounting equations and adds additional equity items to show how they affect the company as a whole. Okay, so we can see on the left side of the equations, the asset side. Okay, so these are the accounts. We have the cash, we have the accounts receivable, the inventories, the intangible assets, and the PPE. Under the liabilities, we have the accounts payable and the unearned revenues. And then on the equities side, okay, so we have the owner's capital less the owner's drawings. Okay, so if you're going to see open and close parentheses in accounting, it means deductions or decrease. So the drawings are deducted from the owner's capital. And then the other items are the revenues less the expenses. I have here an illustration for expanded accounting equation for us to analyze, and our illustration is about Miss Rose's famous barbecues. And I will read the first transaction. Miss Rose has been well known for her delicious variety of barbecues. As such, she decided to open up a barbecue store in her neighborhood. The store would be a sole proprietorship business. In order to do so, she invested 25,000 pesos as initial capital. So based on our illustration, based on the first transactions, okay, so what accounts are affected by the transaction of the entity Miss Rose? Okay, so we can read in the illustration that Miss Rose invested 25,000 as initial capital. So in our accounting equations, so what will be the accounts that will be affected? Okay, so invested 25 pesos, 1,000 pesos as initial capital. So the left side of the account equations is assets. Okay, so cash. So it will be the asset accounts, particularly the cash. Okay, so 25,000 pesos. And according to accounting entity, that equality must be maintained on the both sides of the accounting equation. So what will be the other account that will be affected by the transaction of Miss Rose? Okay, so it says here she invested 25,000 as initial capital. So the equity account will be affected. Okay, so the owner's capital. Okay, so 25,000 pesos. And also from our other video, guys, try to remember the value received and the value parted with. Okay, so the value received from here is the cash, and then the value parted with is the ownership. Okay, so we can see that the assets, there is an increase in assets and also increase in equity accounts. Let's go to the second transaction. To actually create her famous barbecue, she would need the proper equipment to cook it. Thus, she went to the local hardware store and bought the necessary equipment such as grills and utensils for 20,000 pesos. So based on the transaction of Miss Rose, so what accounts in our accounting equations will be affected? Is it the assets or the liabilities or the equity? Okay, so equipment will fall under the assets. Okay, so you can see there is an increase in the assets of Miss Rose, and then at the same time decrease on her cash because she purchased the equipment in cash. Okay, so in our accounting equations, we can see that the left side of the accounting equations is the only one affected. And then tally, so 25,000 pesos less 20,000, so the remaining cash is 5,000. And then equipment 20,000, liabilities is not affected, and then okay, the owner's capital still remain 25,000 pesos. Okay, so if we're going to check, okay, assets equals liabilities plus owner's equities. Okay, so 25,000 on the left side of the equation, and on the right side of the equation is also 25,000 pesos. We go to the third transaction. Miss Rose Barbecues requires only the freshest meat, which can be bought from Miss Sheila's store in the market. Since the meat cost 10,000 pesos, Miss Rose does not have enough money to purchase the meat. Despite that, Miss Rose is already a trusted suki or customer of this store. As such, Miss Sheila decided to give the meat to Miss Rose on the condition that she will pay her in 30 days. Okay, so what are the informations that we can found in the transactions? Okay, so meat. Okay, so the meat cost 10,000 pesos, and unfortunately Miss Rose does not have the enough money to purchase the meat. So what she did, okay, so she purchased the meat on account or credit, and she promised Miss Sheila to pay her in 30 days. So according to our transactions, what will be the accounts that will be affected in our accounting equations? Okay, so meat. Okay, so how are we going to identify the meat? Okay, so in accounting equations, so the meat represent the inventory. Okay, or inventories. So inventories can be raw materials or work in process or the finished goods. Okay, so the meat represent the raw material. So the meat cost 10,000 pesos. Okay, so the assets increased because of the inventories. Okay, so what will be the account that will be affected on the right side of the accounting equation? So since Miss Rose purchased it on account, okay, so it will be account payable. So it will be under liabilities. Okay, so Miss Rose will pay Miss Sheila in 30 days, so for 10,000 pesos. Okay, so if we're going to see our accounting equations, okay, so cash remains the same, 5,000. Equipment is not affected by the transaction, it will remain the same, 20,000. So inventories, okay, 10,000 pesos. And then on the right side of the equations, the liabilities, we have account payable for 10,000 pesos. And then the equities, owner's capital remain the same. Okay, so you can see there is an increase in assets and also increase in liabilities. Okay, so some components of assets like cash and equipments is not affected by this transaction, and also the equities, the owner's capital. And then we can see also that the accounting equations is balanced. So the total assets is worth 35,000. While the right side of the equations, liabilities plus equities, total 35,000. Transaction number 4, it says, to actually set up a business, one of her friends told her that she has to obtain business and other permits from the local government. As such, she paid 1,000 pesos to obtain such permit. So from our transactions, what informations we can get from it? Okay, so the transaction says that Rose paid 1,000 pesos to obtain such permits. Okay, so what accounts will be affected in the accounting equations? Okay, so she paid 1,000 pesos. Okay, so it will be cash. Okay, so we can see here, open and close parentheses, 1,000 pesos. And then on the right side of the equations, what will be the accounts that will be affected by the transaction? So let's say it will be business and other permits. So it will be expense, okay, because according to matching principles, so if you go, if there is a revenue, there must be also an expense. Okay, so there will be no revenue if there will be no expense that is incurred. Okay, so the expense are the permits. Okay, so worth 1,000 pesos. Okay, so we're going to check our accounting equations. Okay, assets, there is a decrease in assets, especially in cash. Okay, so less 1,000. Okay, so from 5,000 minus 1,000, so it will be 4,000. Equipment remain the same, 20,000. Inventories is not affected, remain the same, 10,000. The right side of the equation, accounts payable is not affected, it remain the same. Okay, under the equities, capital remain the same, and our expenses is 1,000 pesos. Okay, so if we are going to check, okay, so total assets, it will be 34,000 pesos. And then on the right side of the equation, 10,000 plus 25,000, 35,000. And then you have to deduct the expenses, 1,000. Okay, so the total is 34,000 pesos. So the two sides of the equations remain balanced or equal. We go to transaction number 5. With everything in place, Miss Rose can now sell her famous barbecues. During the first day of her business, she was able to sell 1,000 sticks of barbecue with a selling price of 20,000 pesos, half of which was paid in cash. The other half was to be paid in 5 days. So on these transactions, what information we can get? Okay, so it says here that Miss Rose was able to sell 20,000 pesos worth of barbecue sticks. And then it also says half of which was paid in cash. So half of 20,000 it was paid on cash, and the other half was to be paid in 5 days. So based on our transaction, what will be the accounts that will be affected by this transaction? Okay, so half of which was paid in cash, so the half of 20,000 is 10,000. Okay, so and then half of it was to be paid in 5 days. So it means that Miss Rose has an account receivable to be paid in 5 days. Okay, so She has 10,000 pesos account receivable now. Okay, so on the other side of equation, so what accounts will be affected by it? Okay, so 20,000 pesos represent the sales or revenue. Okay, so the amount is 20,000 pesos. Okay, so we're going to check our accounting equations. So there is an increase in assets. Okay, so from 4,000 our cash become 14,000, and then the account receivable is 10,000 pesos. Equipment is not affected by this transaction, and also the inventories. Okay, in the other side of the equation, liabilities, the account payable is not affected by the transaction, it remained the same. Also the capital remain the same. Okay, so equities, there is an increase in terms of revenue, so 20,000 pesos. And then the expenses remain the same, 1,000 pesos. Okay, so if we're going to total it, okay, 14,000 plus 10,000, 24,000 plus 20,000, 44,000 plus inventories, 54,000. Okay, then 45, then plus 10,000, 10,000 plus 25,000, 35,000 plus 20,000 is 55,000 minus 1,000 expense, it will be 54,000. So our accounting equations remain equal. Transaction number 6, it says, correspondingly, the 1,000 sticks of barbecues account for the half of the total supply of Miss Rose. So according to this transaction, the 1,000 sticks only account the half of the total supplies. Okay, so what will be the accounts that will be affected on these transactions? Okay, so it says half of the total supply. So the half of 10,000 will be 5,000 pesos. So it means only 5,000 pesos worth of inventories had been sold. Only 5,000 pesos. Okay, so on the other side of the equation, so what will be the account that will be affected by these transactions? So half of the total supplies of meat that are sold represent the cost of goods sold, or the cost of sales. So it will be 5,000 pesos. It will be under expenses. Okay, so we're going to check our accounting equations. Okay, so cash remain the same, so there's no increase or decrease in cash. Okay, 14,000 pesos. Account receivable is not affected, still remain the same, 10,000 pesos. Equipment not affected. Okay, so inventories, so 10,000 minus 5,000 pesos, so the remaining amount of inventories is 5,000 pesos. And then we go to the other side of the equation. Liabilities is not affected. Okay, under equities, capital remain the same. revenue remain the same, then expenses, okay, so the equities, okay, expenses increases of 5,000, so the total expenses will be 6,000 pesos. Okay, so there is decrease in asset sides and increase in the equity side. Okay, so if we're going to total 14,000 plus 10,000 plus 20,000 plus 5,000, the total assets is 49,000. And then the other side, okay, 10,000 liabilities plus 25,000 of capital plus 20,000 of revenue. Okay, so it equals 55,000. And then less 6,000 of expenses. Okay, so the total will be 49,000 pesos. So the two sides of the accounting equation remain equal. Transaction number 7. Miss Rose get cash from the business fund 5,000 pesos for her personal expense. So from this transaction, we get information of Miss Rose drawings of 5,000 pesos for her personal expense. So what will be the accounts that will be affected by these transactions? Okay, so she removed 5,000 pesos. Okay, so there will be a decrease in assets, especially in the account of cash. Okay, 5,000 pesos. And then on the right side, okay, so it will affect the capital account. Okay, so because the owner withdraws 5,000 pesos. Okay, so based on our accounting equations, cash, there is a decrease in cash, 14,000 minus 5, so the remaining cash of Miss Rose is 9,000. Account receivable is not affected, still remain the same. Equipment remain the same. Inventories remain the same. Then the other side of the accounting equations, under liabilities, account payable still the same. Then the capital, okay, the capital account is deducted by the personal drawings of the owners. So 25,000 less 5,000, so the remaining capital account is 20,000 pesos. Revenue remain the same, 20,000, and the expenses remain the same. Okay, so there is a decrease in asset, okay, and also decrease in the equity side. We have here the summaries of all the accounts of Miss Rose transactions. Okay, so on the left side of the equations, which is the assets, we have the cash. The remaining cash of Miss Rose is 9,000 pesos. Account receivable, 10,000 pesos. Equipment, 20,000 pesos. Inventories, 5,000 pesos. And then on the right side of the equations, under the liability account, which is the accounts payable, okay, so she has 10,000 pesos payable to Miss Sheila. And then under the equity accounts, her capital is 20,000 pesos, remaining capital. Then the revenue from her barbecue shop, she earns 20,000 pesos, and then the total expenses is 6,000 pesos. Okay, so the total assets of Miss Rose is equal to 44,000. And then the liabilities equal to 10,000 pesos, and then the total equity 20,000 capital plus the revenue 40,000, then less the expenses 6,000, so the total equity is 34,000. Okay, so based on our simple accounting equations, assets equals liabilities plus owner's equity. Okay, so the total assets is 44,000, and then liabilities plus equities is 44,000. So we can see that our accounting equations is equal or balanced. Let's have a short quiz, guys. I have here 2 questions for you to answer. Okay, so number 1, when an entity performs services for cash, how will the accounting equation be affected? A. Increased equity and increased assets. B. Increased equity and decreased assets. C. Increased assets and decreased liabilities. D. No effect. The second question is, the following transactions would change the accounting equation except one. Which is the exception? A. Purchase of land on credit. B. Sale of goods for cash. C. Investment of additional capital. And D. Deposit of cash in bank. Thank you for watching our tutorial video, guys, and don't forget to comment your answers below on this tutorial video, and don't forget as well to click like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Well done, guys.